What's up, guys? As you can see, I have my M1000 here. I figured I've done a video in the past about taking the Mont Blanc piston assemblies out of the pens, and I figured, I might as well do the same for my M1000. Mainly also because if you've watched my M1000 initial impressions video, in the video I had mentioned that the piston assembly was not screwing all the way down flush against the barrel. Obviously that's not normal, and at first I thought that maybe the piston itself wasn't set with the piston assembly properly, causing it to kind of, when you screw the piston knob all the way down, it brings the piston all the way up, and what happens sometimes if it's not set properly is that the piston itself will wedge up against the bottom of the piston assembly, and it'll make it so that you can't turn the piston knob all the way through. Man, I mean, that gap isn't that noticeable, but when you know it's there, you can just see it. It's one of those things that kind of draws your attention from it. But what I discovered was that it wasn't that the piston wasn't set in properly, but that the threaded insert, if you take a look at it now, if you look closely, the threaded insert that goes into the inside of the piston knob, either that wasn't set in all the way, or the insert itself wasn't cut to the proper length. Looking inside, there are like claws that kind of hold onto the piston. I'll go over more into it later when I take this apart, but I'm erring towards the side that it probably wasn't set in all the way. I tried setting it in by hand against like a wooden surface, and it wouldn't budge. I'm not sure if they just friction fit that threaded insert, or if they actually glued in place when they set it in. So I'd rather not take the chance of actually, trying to press it in more with like an arbor press or something, and risk cracking something if it is glued in there. So I think what I'm gonna do, when I have the time is, and after the honeymoon period of a new pen, where I'm worried about like scratching it or dinging it up or whatever, I'll probably just cut that excess plastic off and kind of sand it down flush so that the knob goes all the way down into the barrel. But anyway, that's different topic. When I took this apart, I actually liked the piston design of the Pelikan a lot more than the Mont Blancs. It's just very, very robustly made. It seems like it'll be very durable and nothing will really break easily, like with the Mont Blancs. But so you see here I have my TWSBI wrench. I'm sure a lot of people already know that, but the wrench that comes with the TWSBIs for you to take the piston assembly out is basically the same spanner size wrench as the same size spanner wrench as for the Pelikans, and you can see on the other side here. I don't think I've done a video on this yet. I think when I did the disassembly of the piston for the 146, I just used the paper clip. But I was dealing with a few 149s, especially an older 149 that would not budge with the paper clip at all. And I decided, you know what? Since I already kind of have a spanner wrench here, let me just modify it to fit Mont Blanc pistons. Not the best job. There are some sharp corners to it. It's not super smooth, but it works. And if I'm very careful about not slipping and scratching something, it's not really an issue. I thought about buying a tool, but in all honesty, I don't really take my Mont Blancs apart that much to really justify paying like $100 for a piston tool. And even if I were to buy one from China or something, it's still like $35. So this works for now. And for my own pens, they're already pretty dinged up, so even if something happens, I doubt, I'm pretty careful about it, so I doubt anything will happen. But even if something does, I run the risk myself by choosing to use a homemade tool and not sending it in for official service. Obviously, I'm going to preface this video, same thing, don't, standard disclaimer, don't take your piston assembly apart, because I'm sure it voids your warranty. And I don't accept any risk in anyone breaking their pens or ruining their pens by doing what I'm going to do in this video. But it's pretty simple. On the piston itself, it's rounded, and then there are two flat spots, and that's where the spanner wrench would come into play. You just kind of slip it in place, screw the piston down a little bit to prevent the wrench from wobbling and moving out, and then what you do is the threads for the piston are actually reverse threads. So you would actually turn towards the right to loosen them, well, clockwise to loosen them. Normally with screws you would go counterclockwise to loosen them out. In this case they're reverse threads. Very important. Obviously if you're not sure which direction you're supposed to turn, you turn one way. If you feel a lot of resistance, don't turn anymore because you can potentially break something. But you would just unscrew it until all the threads are out. Let's see. At this point you could just kind of turn the threads. There are actually quite a few threads that hold the piston assembly in place. You do want to be careful about, there we go. It actually wasn't even probably threaded anymore. What was happening was I was feeling resistance from the piston rotating inside the barrel. You probably don't want to do this too often. You are screwing metal into plastic threads. And if you are not careful about how much you tighten things, or after a while I'm sure it'll wear, you may wear out the threads in the plastic barrel, or resin barrel if you want to call it that. And these barrels, replacement barrels are not cheap, so keep that in mind. And then you could just undo the knob and remove the standard wrench. So this is basically the Pelikan piston unit. It is made out of brass with, I guess, a plastic insert that houses the screw, for this piston assembly. So it works very similar to the Mont Blanc piston assembly. In the case of the Mont Blanc, the actual piston itself has a female end for the screw, while the piston knob has the male end. The piston knob has the male lead spindle, and that would screw into the female end of the sleeved piston, and that would force the piston to go up and down. In this case, what Pelikan does is, if I screw this all the way, instead of having a lead spindle attached into the end of the piston knob, it actually has the piston knob as a separate assembly. And what it does is it actually has a female end of the screw feeding into the piston unit. So if I remove this out from here, what it does is, as the female end spins inside the brass assembly itself, the holder, it'll force the piston up and down, and in order to direct your rotation from the knob to the female end of this housing, if it'll focus, you see there are notches cut out there, and at the bottom of the knob, which I won't be able to show you because I won't be able to focus inside there, there are fins sticking out that fit into those notches. And as you turn this, obviously you'll turn this sleeve, and this will force the piston up and down as this holds everything in place, so that this female sleeve doesn't move and only the piston goes up and down. So I mean, that's basically how the piston works. I probably didn't explain it super well. With the Mont Blancs, you have the lead spindle attached to the piston knob, and what happens sometimes, I've read on the forums, hasn't personally happened to me yet, is that the lead spindle, because it's such a thin plastic, it will break. And once that breaks, I don't think it's an easy repair. One, you would need the replacement part, and I highly doubt you're going to be able to buy it direct from Mont Blanc. And if you were to send it to a repair center, I don't know, they'll probably just charge you for a new barrel. Whatever I think probably the service level one would cover it, which I think runs around $100 US now. In this case, though, there's really nothing to break. This female end is actually pretty thick plastic. It's all plastic, but it's still pretty thick. And the actual screw itself, because it's not meant to fit into a small opening and attach to the piston knob, it's actually quite thick and quite robust. And I don't really see this breaking versus the much thinner lead spindle in the Mont Blancs. So in order to put this back together, you just take your housing, place the female sleeve back in. Now what you're going to it's all greased up, by the way. So when you take this apart, and for general maintenance, you may want to put some extra grease in there just to keep everything nice and smooth. But what you're gonna want to do is, in order to set the piston in properly, you're gonna actually want to start screwing this in a bit. Because if you happen to have the knob loose and then start to screw the piston rod back in, eventually this will contact the back of the piston knob before the piston screws all the way down flush. At the same time, if you start too far down, you'll lose ink capacity because the piston won't go its full travel distance before your knob bottoms out onto the piston assembly. So it's a bit of a trial and error thing, kind of like with the Mont Blancs. But we could try around there. We'll feed this in, put some pressure on it, and then start to screw it down. And right now, I can feel it. I mean, you probably won't be able to see. Let me try if I could get under the loop. You see right now where that plastic insert is setting out? Like, it's not actually sitting flush with the top of the piston housing. And at the same time, this piston won't move up and down anymore. So what that tells me is that the male screw end is actually contacting the back of the piston knob. So what I'm going to have to do is back the piston all the way out and then actually screw this in maybe like another rotation and then try again. And then let me just double check really quick. It's still not screwing all the way down. So once again, back the piston all the way up, tighten this down a little more, and then screw this down. The M1000 has quite a large ink capacity as it is, so I'm not overly concerned about maximizing, how far this piston travels. If I lose a little bit of ink, a little bit of the ink reservoir because the piston's not screwing all the way up, it's not really that big of a deal for me. But if you look right now, you can see that threaded plastic insert is making contact with the top of the piston housing. Now obviously if that insert was cut flush with the piston knob, then you would see the bottom of the knob making contact with the top of the piston assembly. And this, I think this is pretty much as close to maximum ink capacity as I'm really going to get. So in order to place this back in, you just insert it back. Again, it's reverse threads, so you're going to want to rotate counterclockwise to, this direction counterclockwise in order to tighten the piston back down. Once you get a few threads in, then you can, eventually what's going to happen is that you're going to, oh, maybe not so in this case. Alright, well that works. Yeah, usually at this point, because the direction of rotation to loosen the knob is also the same as to screw in the piston unit, the knob will obviously break loose from friction, but that piston assembly isn't all the way in yet. So in this point you would want to just go ahead, insert your spanner wrench again, and then just tighten it down. I don't even go super tight. Once I feel that it stops and there's resistance there, then I just let off. And then you can remove your spanner wrench and check and make sure that everything is functioning properly. So as you can see here, there's that gap there, but that insert is making contact with the end of the barrel. So that's set all the way in. And then if you check for function, it's going to be tough for you to see, but because it's not focusing properly. There we go. You can see, well, you can see through the ink window, and as I turn the knob counterclockwise, the piston goes all the way to the end of the barrel and then feeds all the way back up as I tighten the piston knob back. So yeah, that's how you would disassemble and reassemble the Pelikan piston unit. I don't own an M800, but I would assume that the M800 is exactly the same way. Yeah, so I hope you guys found this video informative. Again, don't try this at home if you're worried about voiding any warranties and you're worried about not doing it right and breaking your pen. For me, pen maintenance is kind of important, and as an engineer, I like trying to figure out how things work. So I very rarely will use service centers and warranty unless it's it's a broken part that I can't source myself, or if it's something that I can't really easily repair. If for example, the used M1000 that I bought before I bought this pen, obviously with that mangled up nib, unless I wanted to buy a replacement nib for $230 some odd, I would have had to remove a lot of tipping material and a lot of the material in the nib in order to get it pretty close to perfect again. So I didn't want to deal with that, which is why I ended up returning that pen. So yeah, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember, don't do it at home unless you're willing to accept any risk that you may potentially break your pen.